Commander Nathan Cross stood at the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the stars through the massive transparent wall. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved slowly through the space lanes like metal fish swimming through an endless ocean. Some were long and sleek like the Zephyrian vessels. Others were round and fat like the trading ships from Corval Prime. But the human ships were different. They looked simple and plain compared to the colorful alien designs. Nathan had been stationed here for 3 years now. He spoke 7 alien languages and could read the body language of 12 different species. The other diplomats respected him, but he always felt like they were watching him carefully, like they were waiting for something. The door behind him opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Lydia Kane walked in, her footsteps quiet on the metal floor. She was older than Nathan, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been dealing with aliens for 20 years, longer than anyone else in the human diplomatic service. "The morning briefing is starting soon," she said, standing next to him at the window. "The Zephyrians want to discuss the new human colony." Again, Nathan sighed. "Let me guess. They think we are expanding too fast." "They think we are getting too powerful," Lydia corrected. "There is a difference." They watched a Zephyrian warship drift past the station. It was 3 times the size of any human vessel, covered in weapons that glowed with blue energy. The Zephyrians were proud of their military strength. They had conquered dozens of worlds before humans ever left Earth. "Have you ever wondered why they are so afraid of us?" Nathan asked. "We have smaller ships, fewer weapons, and we only started exploring space 50 years ago. They have been doing this for centuries." Lydia was quiet for a moment. "There are rules in this galaxy, Nathan. Old rules that even the Zephyrians follow. Rules that keep everyone safe." "What kind of rules?" "The kind that exist for very good reasons." She turned away from the window. "Come on, we should not keep them waiting." The briefing room was large and round, with seats arranged in a circle. Each seat was designed for a different species. The Zephyrians sat in tall chairs that supported their long bodies. The Corvals needed wide seats for their thick frames. The Nexians floated in special chambers filled with their breathing gas. Chancellor HFY was already there, his snake-like head moving slowly as he watched the humans enter. His scales were dark blue today, which meant he was annoyed about something. Nathan had learned to read Zephyrian colors during his first year on the station. "Humans," HFY said, his voice making a hissing sound. "We must talk about your new colony." "Haven's Rest," Lydia said, taking her seat. What about it?" "It is too close to our space," said Corval Ambassador Thekmon, his forearms moving as he spoke. "Your species builds colonies faster than we can count them." Nathan leaned forward. "Haven's Rest is in unclaimed space. We followed all the proper procedures. We filed the paperwork with the Galactic Council 6 months ago. That is not the problem," HFY said. His tail moved behind his chair, another sign of anger. "The problem is that you humans do not understand your place in this galaxy." The room went quiet. Even the Nexians stopped their constant buzzing. Nathan felt his hands get tight, but he kept his voice calm. "And what is our place? You are new here," HFY continued. "Your species has only been in space for a few decades. You should be learning from us, not trying to compete with us." Ambassador Kane spoke before Nathan could respond. "We are not competing with anyone. We are simply trying to make a home for our people." 50,000 humans on Haven's Rest," said the Nexian delegate through its translator. 12,000 of them are young ones. That is a lot of humans in one place. Something cold moved down Nathan's back. The way the alien had said young ones sounded wrong, like it was important somehow. "Is there a problem with having families on our colonies?" Nathan asked. The aliens looked at each other. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Nathan had seen this before, but he had never understood what it meant. "There are no problems," HFY said finally. "We simply want to make sure that everyone understands the rules." "What rules?" Lydia asked. Nathan noticed that her voice was very quiet, like she was trying to stay calm. "The old rules," HFY said, "the ones that keep peace in the galaxy." After the meeting, Nathan found Dr. Elena Rodriguez in her lab. She was studying tissue samples from different alien species, trying to understand how they all evolved. Her lab was full of computers and microscopes and tanks filled with strange liquids. "Elena," Nathan said, "I need to ask you something." She looked up from her work. "What is it? Do you know anything about old galactic rules? Laws that all the species follow?" Elena stopped what she was doing. "Why do you ask?" "The aliens keep talking about rules, but they never say what they are. Today they seemed very interested in the fact that we have children on Haven's Rest." Elena was quiet for a long time. Then, she walked over to her computer and started typing. "I have been studying old records," she said. "Things from before humans joined the galactic community. There are references to something called the First Rule." "What does it say?" "That is the problem. Most of the records are damaged or incomplete, but from what I can piece together, it has something to do with young ones. Children." Nathan felt that cold feeling again. "What kind of rule about children?" "I do not know exactly. But Nathan, there are other things in these records. References to a species called the Forerunners. They disappeared about 400 years ago." "Disappeared?" "Completely. Their worlds are empty. Their cities are ruins. There is no trace of what happened to them except for one line in an old Zephyrian military report." "What does it say?" Elena read from her screen. "They broke the first rule, and then there were none." Nathan stared at the screen. "What do you think it means?" "I do not know, but Nathan, I think we need to find out. Because if there really is a first rule about children, and if something happened to the last species that broke it," she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Nathan understood what she was thinking. If there was a rule about not harming children, and if the aliens were talking about Haven's Rest and its 12,000 young humans, then something very bad might be about to happen. That night, Nathan could not sleep. He stood at his window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Haven's Rest, with its 50,000 humans living peaceful lives. They had schools and parks and playgrounds. They had families and children and dreams of the future. The aliens had seemed very interested in those children today. Too interested. Nathan made a decision. Tomorrow he would send a message to Haven's Rest. Just a simple warning to be careful, to watch for any unusual activity in their space. He did not know that it was already too late. At that very moment, Zephyrian warships were moving through the darkness toward Haven's Rest. In 3 days they would arrive. In 3 days the first rule would be broken, and the galaxy would learn why some rules should never be violated. Captain Ryan Mitchell stood on the bridge of the transport ship Aurora's Dream, watching the morning sun rise over Haven's Rest. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded him of Earth. But today something felt wrong. His sensors were picking up movement at the edge of the solar system. "Captain," said his communications officer, "we are getting strange readings from the outer sensors, multiple ships approaching." Ryan frowned. "Any identification signals?" "Negative, sir. They are not responding to our calls." Ryan had been flying transport ships for 15 years. He knew when something was not right. "How many ships?" "At least 20, sir. Maybe more." 20 ships was a lot for a peaceful visit. Ryan activated the colony's emergency channel. "Haven's Rest Control, this is Aurora's Dream. We have unknown ships approaching the system." The voice that answered belonged to Colonel Derek Stone, the head of the colony's small defense force. "We see them too, Ryan. We are trying to contact them now." On the planet's surface, Colonel Stone stood in the colony's command center. He was a career military man who had served in 3 different conflicts before retiring to Haven's Rest. The colony was supposed to be his peaceful assignment, a place where he could watch his grandchildren grow up safely. Now he was looking at his screens with growing worry. The approaching ships were big, much bigger than anything the human colony could handle. "Sir," said his communications specialist, "I am getting a response from the lead ship. It is Zephyrian." Stone felt his stomach drop. Put them through. The voice that came through the speakers was cold and mechanical. Human Colony Haven's Rest. This is Admiral Kethavar of the Zephyrian Third Fleet. You will prepare for inspection. Admiral, Stone replied. This is Colonel Stone. Haven's Rest is a peaceful civilian colony. We are not prepared for military inspection. What is the nature of your visit? There was a long pause. Then Admiral Kethavar spoke again. You humans have been expanding too quickly. The Galactic Council has authorized us to ensure you understand your place in this galaxy. Stone's blood went cold. This was not an inspection. This was a threat. Admiral, we have 50,000 civilians here, including 12,000 children. If you have concerns about our colony, we can discuss them through proper diplomatic channels. The time for discussion is over, Kethavar said. Prepare for our arrival. The channel went dead. Stone immediately activated the colony's emergency broadcast system. All residents of Haven's Rest, this is Colonel Stone. We have a code yellow situation. All families with children should report to designated safe areas immediately. This is not a drill. In the colony's primary school, teacher Margaret Foster was reading to her class of 7-year-olds when the announcement came. The children looked up at her with worried faces. Mrs. Foster? Asked a little girl named Ashley Turner. What is code yellow? Margaret kept her voice calm, even though her heart was racing. It means we need to go to the safe room for a little while. Just like we practiced. Ashley was a bright child with curly brown hair and big green eyes. She was the youngest of 3 children, and her older sister Sophie was serving on a military ship somewhere in human space. Ashley missed her sister and wrote her letters every week. Are we in trouble? Ashley asked as Margaret led the class down the hallway. No, sweetheart. The grown-ups are just being extra careful. But Margaret knew they were in trouble, big trouble. In space above the planet, Captain Mitchell was loading his ship with evacuees. Families with young children were being given priority for transport to the orbital safety stations. Captain, his pilot said, the Zephyrian fleet is getting closer. They will be here in 2 hours. Mitchell nodded. How many more trips can we make? Maybe 3 if we push the engines hard. Then push them. Get as many kids off the planet as possible. Mitchell had children of his own back on Earth. He understood what was at stake here. The Zephyrian fleet arrived like a storm cloud, their ships blocking out the sun. Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the human colony. He was old for a Zephyrian with dark blue scales and scars from many battles. He did not want to be here. He had fought against this mission in the planning meetings. But Chancellor Vexhai had been very clear. The humans needed to be taught a lesson. They needed to understand who was really in charge of this galaxy. Admiral, his weapons officer, said, the humans are evacuating their young to orbital platforms. Should we stop them? Kethavar watched the small transport ships moving back and forth between the planet and the space stations. Each ship carried dozens of human children to safety. Let them evacuate, he said finally. We are here to send a message, not to slaughter innocents. But not all of his officers agreed with that decision. On the planet, Colonel Stone was coordinating the evacuation from his command bunker. The colony's few defensive weapons were being prepared, but he knew they would not be enough against a full Zephyrian fleet. Sir, his aide said, we have transported 8,000 children to the orbital stations. 4,000 are still on the surface. Stone closed his eyes. Not enough time. Captain Mitchell was making his final run to the orbital stations when it happened. His ship was full of children, their scared faces looking out the windows at the massive alien warships. A young Zephyrian gunner, nervous and scared, saw the human transport approaching. In his panic, he thought it might be an attack ship. His training had taught him that humans were dangerous and unpredictable. He fired. The energy beam cut through Aurora's dream like a knife through paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire and light. Captain Mitchell, 37 children, and 5 teachers died instantly. On his flagship, Admiral Kethavar stared in horror at what had happened. Who fired that shot? He roared. It was an accident, sir, his weapons officer said. Gunner Third Class Yextal thought the transport was attacking. Kethvar felt something cold settle in his stomach. The transport had been full of children, human children. "Sir," his communications officer said, "the humans are trying to surrender. Colonel Stone is requesting immediate ceasefire." But it was too late. Other ships in the fleet, seeing the transport destroyed, began firing at the orbital stations. The chain of command had broken down. Fear and confusion had taken over. Young Zephyrian officers who had been told that humans were a threat began shooting at anything that moved. The evacuation stations were destroyed one by one. More ships full of children were blown apart. On the planet, Colonel Stone watched his screens in horror as the orbital stations disappeared in explosions of light. Thousands of children who should have been safe were dying in the cold vacuum of space. "Cease fire," he broadcast on all channels. "We surrender, cease fire." But the aliens could not stop what they had started. Fear had turned into panic, and panic had turned into slaughter. Ashley Turner was in the school's safe room when the bombing of the planet began. The building shook as energy beams struck the colony's outer districts. The lights went out, and emergency power kicked in. "Mrs. Foster," Ashley whispered in the darkness. "I want my sister." Margaret Foster held the little girl close as explosions lit up the sky outside. She had no words to comfort the children. She could only hold them and pray that someone would make it stop. But it did not stop. For 3 hours, the Zephyrian fleet bombarded Haven's Rest. They destroyed the evacuation centers where families waited for transport. They hit the medical facility where injured children were being treated. They destroyed the primary school, where Ashley Turner and her classmates huddled in the darkness. When it was over, 3,000 human children were dead. The peaceful colony of Haven's Rest was in ruins. Admiral Kethvar stood on his bridge, staring at the burning planet below. His scales had turned pale gray, the color of shame and horror. "What have we done?" he whispered. But he already knew the answer. They had broken the first rule. They had harmed human children, and somewhere in human space people were learning what had happened. People who would not forget. People who would not forgive. The galaxy was about to discover why the first rule existed, and why breaking it was the worst mistake the aliens had ever made. Commander Nathan Cross was eating breakfast when the message came through. The emergency alert made his communication device beep with a sharp, urgent sound. He almost dropped his coffee when he read the first line. Haven's Rest colony attacked. Massive casualties. Children among the dead. Nathan ran to the communication center of New Geneva Station. His hands shook as he activated the secure channel to Earth Command. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to General Marcus Hayes, the head of Human Defense Command. The general looked older than Nathan remembered. "Nathan," General Hayes said, his voice very quiet. "I need you to confirm what we are hearing about Haven's Rest." "Sir, I am trying to get the details now. What do you know?" "A Zephyrian fleet attacked the colony 3 hours ago. Early reports say 3,000 children are dead." Nathan felt the room spin around him. 3,000 children. Little kids like Ashley Turner, who he had never met but somehow felt like he knew. Children who had been playing and learning and dreaming just hours ago. "Sir, this has to be a mistake. The aliens would never—" "They did," General Hayes said. "We have confirmed reports from survivors. The Zephyrians and their allies deliberately targeted evacuation sites and schools." Nathan sat down hard in his chair. "What are our orders, sir?" General Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "All human diplomats are to return to Earth immediately. All trade agreements are suspended. All scientific exchanges are canceled." "Sir, what about the peace talks next week?" "There will be no more peace talks, Commander. Not after this." The channel went dead. Across the galaxy, the same scene was playing out on dozens of human ships and stations. Every human diplomat, trader, scientist, and explorer received the same message. "Come home now." Ambassador Lydia Kane was packing her files when Nathan found her. Her office, which had always been neat and organized, now looked like a storm had hit it. Papers were scattered everywhere, and her computer screens showed evacuation schedules. "Lydia," Nathan said, "what is happening?" She looked up at him with eyes that seemed much older than they had that morning. "We are leaving, Nathan. All of us. Every human in alien space is coming home. But what about our missions here? What? About the diplomatic agreements? Lydia laughed, but it was not a happy sound. What agreements? They just murdered 3,000 of our children. Did you think we would stay here and shake hands with them? Nathan had never heard Lydia speak with such cold anger. She had always been the calm one, the voice of reason. Now she sounded like someone he did not recognize. The aliens are asking for meetings, Nathan said. Chancellor Vexhai wants to explain what happened. Let him explain it to himself. Lydia sealed the last of her files in a security case. We are done talking to them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was in her lab, frantically copying her research files. She had been working around the clock since the attack, searching through old records for information about the first rule. Nathan, she said when he walked in, I found something important. She led him to her computer, where ancient text scrolled across the screen. This is from a Corval historical database. It talks about the Forerunners, the species that disappeared 400 years ago. Nathan read the text over her shoulder. Most of it was in old Corval script, but Elena had translated the important parts. It says the Forerunners were a powerful, military species, Elena explained. They had conquered dozens of worlds and considered themselves the masters of their region of space, but then they made contact with another species, a species with young ones that the Forerunners considered weak and unimportant. What happened? The Forerunners attacked a colony belonging to this other species. They killed many of the young, ones thinking it would be an easy victory, a way to show their strength. Nathan felt cold. And then the other species showed the Forerunners what real strength looked like. Within 6 months, every Forerunner world was empty. Every Forerunner ship was destroyed. The entire species was wiped out. What species did this? Elena looked at him with frightened eyes. The record does not say. It just calls them the guardians of the young ones. But Nathan, the dates match up. 400 years ago was when humans first started exploring space beyond our solar system. Nathan stared at the screen. You think humans destroyed the Forerunners? I think humans have been in space much longer than we tell anyone, and I think the aliens know it. On Earth, General Hayes stood in a war room deep beneath Human Defense Command. The room was filled with screens showing star maps, ship positions, and casualty reports. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's military forces. Admiral Catherine Walsh was the first to speak. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. How many ships do we have? Available for immediate deployment? More than they think, said Admiral Jacob Foster, a younger man with the quiet confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. Operation Deep Watch has been building our hidden fleet for 20 years. We have over 300 ships that do not appear on any official records. General Hayes nodded. What about the orbital defense platforms? All systems are coming online, reported Chief Engineer Tony Martinez. The platforms the aliens think are old mining stations are actually weapons systems. They have been hidden, in plain sight for decades. Admiral Walsh pulled up a star map. The aliens think they know our capabilities. They think we are a young species with simple technology. They are about to learn how wrong they are. General Hayes looked around the table at his commanders. These were people who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment, not hoping for it, but knowing it might come. Intelligence Director Phillips, he said to a quiet woman in the corner, what do we know about alien military positions? Karen Phillips stepped forward. We have been monitoring their communications and ship movements for years. Every human, trade mission, every diplomatic exchange, every scientific survey was also a reconnaissance mission. We know where their fleets are, where their weapons are stored, and where their leaders are hiding. And their weaknesses? They depend on us more than they realize. Human-designed computer systems run their communications networks. Human-engineered materials are built into their ships. Human trade routes supply their colonies. They invited us into their systems, and now we control more of their infrastructure than they do. General Hayes was quiet for a moment. How long before we are ready? The fleet will be in position in 72 hours, Admiral Walsh said. But sir, What about the diplomatic consequences? If we do this, there will be no going back. There is already no going back, General Hayes replied. They killed our children. They broke the one rule that should never be broken. Now they learn why that rule existed. He activated the communication system that connected to every human world, every human ship, every human outpost in the galaxy. This is General Hayes. At 14:30 today, alien forces attacked the peaceful colony of Haven's Rest. 3,000 human children were murdered in what can only be described as a deliberate act of genocide. The attackers targeted schools, medical facilities, and evacuation centers. They showed no mercy to the innocent. He paused, letting his words sink in across human space. Effective immediately, all human personnel are to withdraw from alien territories. All diplomatic relations are suspended. All trade agreements are canceled. We gave them a chance for peace. They chose war. Another pause. They think they know us. They think we are weak because we choose diplomacy over violence. They think we are helpless because we are young. They are about to discover how wrong they are. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, humans began to disappear. Trade ships changed course and headed for home. Diplomatic stations went dark. Scientific expeditions packed up and left. Within hours, it was as if humanity had simply vanished from alien space. But they had not vanished. They were coming home to prepare for war. On Haven's Rest, Ashley Turner sat in a medical tent, holding a picture of her sister Sophie. The little girl had survived the attack, but many of her friends had not. Mrs. Foster was gone. Half of her class was gone. A relief worker knelt beside her. "Honey, we are going to take you somewhere safe, away from here." Ashley looked up with eyes that had seen too much. "When is my sister coming home?" The relief worker did not know how to answer. But somewhere in space, Sophie Williams was already on her way. She was aboard the human dreadnought Vengeance, and she was very angry. The galaxy had 72 hours before it learned what humanity was really capable of. 72 hours before the true meaning of the first rule became clear. And for the aliens who had broken that rule, 72 hours was not nearly enough time to prepare for what was coming. The 72 hours passed like a held breath. Across the galaxy, alien leaders waited for humanity's response. Most expected angry words and diplomatic protests. Some prepared for trade sanctions or economic pressure. None of them expected what actually came. At exactly 14:30, 72 hours after the attack on Haven's Rest, Admiral Catherine Walsh spoke into her communication system aboard the command ship Terra's Might. "This is Admiral Walsh of the human colonial fleet. Your time is up. You chose not to surrender those responsible for the massacre of our children. You chose not to make reparations for your crimes. You have chosen war." She paused, looking at the tactical display showing human fleets positioned around every major alien military installation in the galaxy. "You broke the first rule. Now you learn why it existed." The first targets were the Zephyrian home fleet, the same ships that had attacked Haven's Rest. Admiral Kethvar stood on his flagship, watching his sensors as human ships appeared from nowhere. One moment space was empty. The next moment, 30 human warships surrounded his fleet. "Where did they come from?" his weapons officer asked. Kethvar did not answer. He was staring at the human ships with growing horror. They were not the simple vessels he had seen in diplomatic meetings. These ships were sleek and dark, covered with weapons he did not recognize. They moved like living things, flowing through space in ways that should have been impossible. "Sir," his communications officer said, "the humans are sending a message." The voice that came through the speakers was cold and calm. It belonged to Commander Sophie Williams, Ashley Turner's older sister. She had requested this mission personally. "Zephyrian Fleet, this is Commander Williams aboard the Vengeance. You killed my little sister's friends. You destroyed her school. You murdered 3,000 innocent children. I am here to collect payment for that debt." Kethvar activated his own communication system. "Commander Williams, I am Admiral Kethvar. What happened at Haven's Rest was a terrible mistake. We did not intend..." I do not care what you intended, Sophie interrupted. I only care what you did. You have 30 seconds to prepare. Prepare for what? To die. The human ships opened fire. Kethvar had been in many battles, but he had never seen weapons like these. The human energy beams cut through Zephyrian shields like they were made of paper. Ships that had taken years to build were destroyed in seconds. The weapons seemed to target specific systems, turning powerful warships into helpless hulks. Return. Fire! Kethvar ordered, but his weapons had no effect. The human ships moved too fast, and their shields absorbed everything the Zephyrians could throw at them. In 10 minutes, the entire Zephyrian home fleet was destroyed. 37 ships and 20,000 alien warriors gone. Only Kethvar's flagship remained, its weapons and engines disabled. Admiral, Sophie's voice came through the speakers again. Your ship is being spared so you can carry a message. Back to your government. Tell them what you saw here today. Tell them this is what happens when you harm human children. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Human fleets appeared at Corval Prime, where the massive alien shipyards had been building new warships. The humans did not negotiate or make demands. They simply destroyed everything. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez watched from his command ship as the orbital stations exploded one by one. Each station had taken the Corvals 50 years to build. The humans destroyed them all in 20 minutes. Sir, his tactical officer said, the Corval government is trying to surrender. Too late for that, Martinez replied. They should have thought about surrender before they helped murder our children. The Nexian colonies were next. These aliens lived in underwater cities on ocean worlds, thinking the water would protect them. They were wrong. Human ships appeared in orbit and fired weapons that boiled the seas. Entire cities rose to the surface as dead metal shells. Admiral Jacob Foster stood on the bridge of his flagship Liberation, watching the destruction below. He felt no joy in what he was doing, but he felt no regret either. Sir, his aide said, intelligence is reporting that the alien communication networks are failing. They cannot coordinate their defenses. Foster nodded. That is because they are using our systems. Director Phillips has been very thorough. On Earth, Intelligence Director Karen Phillips sat in a dark room filled with computer screens. For 20 years, she had been placing hidden programs in alien computer networks. Every time humans had helped aliens upgrade their technology, they had also installed secret backdoors. Now those backdoors were being used. Alien ships could not communicate with each other. Their navigation systems gave wrong directions. Their weapons targeting failed at critical moments. The aliens were fighting blind and deaf while the humans could see everything. Sector 7 reports all targets destroyed, one of her technicians said. Sector 12 is asking for additional support, said another. Phillips coordinated the invisible war happening in cyberspace while her colleagues fought the visible war in the stars. Every alien system that humans had touched was now turned against its owners. Chancellor Vexahai sat in his underground bunker on the Zephyrian homeworld, trying to understand what was happening. His military advisors brought him reports that made no sense. Sir, the humans have destroyed our 3rd Fleet, our 7th Fleet, and our home defense squadron. They appear to have unlimited ships and weapons we have never seen before. How many human ships are attacking us? Vexahai asked. We do not know, sir. They seem to appear and disappear at will. Our sensors cannot track them properly. Vexahai's scales turned pale with fear. What about our allies? The Corvals? The Nexians? Sir, the Corval shipyards are gone. The Nexian colonies they are all dead, sir. The humans boiled their oceans. Vexahai stared at his advisor. Boiled their oceans. What kind of weapons could boil entire planets? Sir, his communication officer said, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through. The voice belonged to Admiral Walsh. Chancellor Vexahai, this is Admiral Walsh of the human colonial fleet. Your military forces have been neutralized. Your allies have been defeated. You are alone. Admiral, Vexahai said, trying to keep his voice steady. We can discuss terms. There are no terms, Walsh replied. You killed our children. There can be no forgiveness for that. But we are not monsters like you. We will allow your civilians to live under human protection. Protection? The galaxy now belongs to humanity. You will follow our rules. You will accept our oversight. And you will never again raise a hand against any child, human or otherwise. The transmission ended. Vexhai sat in silence, trying to understand what had happened. In less than 6 hours, the 3 most powerful military forces in the galaxy had been completely destroyed. The humans had revealed weapons and capabilities that no one had suspected. "Sir," his aide whispered, "what are your orders?" Vexhai closed his eyes. "Send a message to all Zephyrian worlds. We surrender unconditionally." Across the galaxy, similar surrender messages were being sent. The Corvals gave up after their capital city was surrounded by human ships. The few surviving Nexians begged for mercy from underwater shelters. But the humans were not finished. Intelligence Director Phillips had prepared a list of every alien who had voted for the attack on Haven's Rest. Every politician, every military leader, every official who had supported the massacre would be found. Some tried to hide. Some tried to run to distant worlds. It did not matter. Human agents appeared everywhere, collecting the guilty with quiet efficiency. There would be trials later, but the outcome was already decided. Admiral Walsh stood on her ship, looking at the tactical display that showed human control spreading across the galaxy. Green dots marked secured systems. Red dots showed remaining resistance. There were very few red dots left. "Admiral," her aide said, "we are receiving surrender requests from 17 different systems. What are your orders?" "Accept their surrenders. But make it clear that this is not a negotiation. They will follow human law now. They will accept human oversight, and they will dedicate resources to building a memorial for every child who died at Haven's Rest." Walsh thought about Ashley Turner, the little girl who had survived the massacre. The child was safe now, living with relatives on Earth. But she would grow up in a galaxy forever changed by what had happened to her friends. "Admiral," the aide continued, "what about the species that did not participate in the attack? Some of them are asking if they can remain independent." Walsh considered this. There were dozens of alien species that had not been involved in the massacre. Some had even spoken against it. "Tell them they can maintain their governments. But they will accept human observers. They will follow the new galactic laws that we will establish, and they will help us make sure that nothing like Haven's Rest ever happens again." The galaxy was quiet now. The fighting was over. Humanity had won not just a victory, but complete dominance over every other species in known space. But as Admiral, Walsh looked at the stars through her ship's window. She felt no celebration. 3,000 children were still dead. Ashley Turner still had nightmares about the day her friends died. Victory could not bring back the innocent lives that had been lost. The first rule had been broken, and now the galaxy would live with the consequences forever. 6 months after the war ended, Ashley Turner stood in front of a massive wall made of black stone. The wall was on Haven's Rest, where her old school used to be. Now it was covered with names. 3,000 names of children who had died when the aliens attacked. Ashley was 11 years old now, but she looked older. Her green eyes had seen too much for someone so young. She placed a small flower at the base of the wall, where her friend Tommy's name was carved in golden letters. "I miss you," she whispered to the wall. "But you are safe now. We are all safe now." Behind her stood Director General Patricia Morgan, the woman who now governed the galaxy. Patricia was a tall woman with gray hair who had once been a diplomat. Now she was the most powerful person in known space. "Ashley," Patricia said gently, "are you ready to speak to the visitors?" Ashley nodded. Today, leaders from 12 different alien worlds were coming to Haven's Rest. They came every few months now, required by human law to visit the memorial and pay their respects. It was part of their punishment for what their species had done. The alien delegation arrived in small, simple ships. The humans no longer allowed them to have big warships. They could only travel in vessels that carried no weapons and could be tracked at all times. Chancellor Vexhai was among them. The old Zephyrian, looked much smaller than he had before the war. His scales were pale gray, the color of permanent shame. He had spent the last 6 months working in the ruins of Haven's Rest, helping to rebuild what his people had destroyed. "Director General Morgan," he said, bowing low, "we have come to pay our respects." Patricia nodded coldly. "You may proceed to the memorial." The aliens walked slowly to the black wall. Each of them carried flowers or small gifts. They placed these offerings at the base of the wall and stood in silence. Some of them were crying. Even the Corvals, who rarely showed emotion, had tears in their 4 eyes. Ashley watched them for a moment, then stepped forward. The aliens looked nervous when she approached. They knew who she was, the little girl who had survived their attack, the sister of Commander Sophie Williams, who had destroyed their fleets. "My name is Ashley Turner," she said in a clear, strong voice. "I was 8 years old when you attacked my home. My friends died in that school behind you. My teacher, Mrs. Foster, died trying to protect us." The aliens listened in uncomfortable silence. "But I am not here to be angry at you," Ashley continued. "I am here to make sure you remember, so that you never forget what happens when you hurt children." Chancellor Vex High knelt down so he was at eye level with Ashley. "Little one, I am sorry. I am so very sorry for what we did." Ashley looked at him with those old wise eyes. "Sorry does not bring my friends back, but maybe it will protect other children." After the aliens left, Ashley walked with Patricia through the New Haven's Rest. The colony had been completely rebuilt, bigger and better than before. But there were differences now. Human soldiers stood guard at every entrance. Defense satellites watched the skies, and in the center of town stood a tall tower with sensors that could detect any threat from across the galaxy. "Do you ever get tired of being in charge of everything?" Ashley asked. Patricia smiled sadly. "Every day, but someone has to make sure the rules are followed." The new rules were simple but absolute. No species could have military forces larger than what humans allowed. No world could develop weapons without human approval. And most importantly, any threat to children anywhere in the galaxy would result in immediate human intervention. Dr. Helena Rodriguez had finally finished her research into the old records. She now knew the complete truth about the first rule and the species that had broken it before. "The Forerunners were not the first," she told Patricia in her office. "There have been others, 3 different species over the last 1,000 years. All of them made the same mistake. All of them attacked human children. And what happened to them? They all disappeared completely, every single one. Humans have been protecting children across the galaxy for a very long time. We just forgot, because we moved to new areas of space and started fresh each time." Patricia studied the ancient records on Elena's screen. "So the aliens have always known about this rule?" "The older species knew. They passed down warnings. But newer species like the Zephyrians and Corvals thought the stories were just myths. They thought humans were weak, because we seemed peaceful. They learned otherwise. On the former Zephyrian homeworld, Admiral Kethvar worked in a factory, building human-designed safety equipment. He was no longer an admiral. The humans had taken away all military ranks from those who had participated in the attack. Now he was just a worker, trying to earn forgiveness for his crimes. Every day he built devices that would protect children on alien worlds, emergency beacons that could call for human help, shields that could protect schools from attack, medical equipment for young victims of accidents or disasters. It was slow work, and he would probably spend the rest of his life doing it. But he did not complain. He had seen what humans were capable of when their children were threatened. He was lucky to be alive. In the human military academy on Earth, young officers learned about the war through carefully recorded lessons. They studied the tactics used by Admiral Walsh and the strategies developed by General Hayes. But most importantly, they learned about responsibility. Remember, their instructors told them, "We do not rule the galaxy because we wanted to. We rule because someone had to make sure this never happened again. The power we have is not for our benefit. It is for the protection of every innocent being in known space." Commander Sophie Williams, now Admiral Williams, taught some of these classes. She would show her students pictures of the memorial wall on Haven's Rest. My little sister, Ashley, survived, she would tell them, but 3,000 other children did not. Our job is to make sure their deaths have meaning. Our job is to make sure it never happens again. The galaxy was peaceful now. Human ships patrolled every star system, making sure the rules were followed. Human observers sat in on alien government meetings. Human teachers instructed alien children about tolerance and protecting the innocent. Some aliens complained that humanity had become too controlling. They said humans had too much power over other species. But their complaints were quiet, and they were few. Most aliens understood that the current system was fair. Humans did not take resources from other worlds. They did not enslave other species. They simply made sure that everyone followed the same basic rules about protecting the innocent. Children of all species now grew up safely under human protection. Zephyrian young ones played in parks guarded by human soldiers. Corval families lived in peace knowing that human ships watched their skies. Even the surviving Nexians in their new underwater cities felt secure under human oversight. Ashley Turner grew older and became a teacher herself. She worked at the new school built on Haven's Rest, teaching children from many different worlds about history and peace. Her students included human children, young Zephyrians, Corval offspring, and others. "Why do the humans protect everyone?" a young Zephyrian student asked her one day. Ashley thought about the question carefully. "Because," she said finally, "that is what strong people do. They protect those who cannot protect themselves. And children, no matter what species they are, deserve to be safe." Every year on the anniversary of the Haven's Rest massacre, representatives from every world in the galaxy gathered at the memorial. They would read the names of the children who had died and promise to remember the lesson learned. Director General Morgan, now much older, still attended these ceremonies. She would stand with Ashley, now a grown woman with children of her own, and they would watch as aliens and humans together honored the memory of the lost. "Do you think it was worth it?" Ashley asked during one such ceremony. "All the destruction, all the conquest, all the changes we made." Patricia looked at the mixed group of children playing safely in the memorial garden. Human children played with young Zephyrians. Corval offspring shared toys with Nexian young ones. None of them knew or cared about the old hatred between their species. "Yes," Patricia said, "it was worth it." The galaxy had learned the first rule, the hard way. They had broken it once and paid a terrible price. Now, under human guidance, they would never break it again. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other species and other galaxies looked toward human territory and wondered about the stories they heard. Stories about a species that valued children above all else. Stories about what happened to those who threatened the innocent. The stories spread as stories do. And maybe, just maybe, other potential attackers would remember the first rule before it was too late. Because the rule was simple, and it was absolute. Never attack the children. Never harm the innocent. And never, ever underestimate what will happen to you if you do.